Hey there, everybody. Welcome to a special bonus episode of Gather and Go, the podcast that helps you plan, promote, and lead better trips. I'm Brian Jewell. I am your host. I am delighted to be with you today. And as always, we're going to do everything we can to make this investment of your time worth your while. When I first started traveling professionally, way back, well, let's just say it was way back, one of the very first holiday-themed tours I did was to Germany. I went with a tour operator who was highlighting some of the famous Christmas markets of Bavaria. It was mind-blowing in so many ways, absolutely beautiful. Also, the first time I had been to something quite so historic as some of the medieval towns in Europe. Really, really eye-opening for a young traveler. As we approach the holidays this year, I'm going to take this opportunity in partnership with our friends at the Historic Highlights of Germany to showcase some of those German towns that I visited, well, a long time ago. Tell you why they and others like them deserve to be at the top of your group's foreign travel wish list. We're going to talk about Christmas markets. We're going to talk about Easter. We're going to talk about beer festivals and wine and touring these amazing historic towns in Germany all throughout the year. So if you have always been curious about Germany, if you've always been curious about travel to Europe, if you have wondered whether you could or should take your group to a European city, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. Now, my guests for this conversation are Sascha Mayerer, who runs the Historic Highlights of Germany Association, along with his good friend and tour operator, Sandra Weinacht, who has been a guest on the podcast before. So we're going to jump right in to my conversation with Sascha and Sandra. All right, everybody. My guests today are seasoned tourism pros who are the world's experts on visiting Germany's most historic destinations. Sascha Mayerer was born in Germany's oldest city and has been promoting the country's most beautiful destinations for 14 years. Today, he's the CEO of Historic Highlights of the Germany Association, where he represents 17 of the country's most historic smaller destinations. His colleague Sandra Weinacht is a German native and friend of the podcast, who has taken thousands of travelers on adventures around her home country. Sascha and Sandra, welcome to the podcast.
Ladies first, hello there.
Thank you, Brian, for having us.
I am so excited to have you guys here today. From the very first, Americans, we don't understand history in the same context that you do. We tend to have a very compressed timeline. When we talk about historic cities, we're thinking 100 years old, 200 years old. So help us understand, when you say historic cities in Germany, exactly how historic are they?
So that depends on which cities, of course, we are talking about. We do have cities that were founded only 100 years ago, but coming back what you said earlier, because I was born in the oldest city of Germany, that was founded 2,000 years ago by the Romans. So we do have a huge timeline there from 2,000 years ago, 16 before Christ, to very new ones that were founded in the 50s, 60s, and so on. But the very, very old ones that I'm representing with the Historic Highlights of Germany have at least 800 years of history.
That's incredible. So take us back. My historical knowledge is not that good. Take us back. What was happening with the human race 800 years ago when these cities were being established?
Let me start with back to my hometown again, because that's kind of where everything started, because that was the first city that was ever planned to be a city in Germany. And in 313, so 313, that's when everything happened around Catholicism, when Constantine the Great, who ruled from Trier over a vast empire from the Hadrian's Wall in Great Britain down to Morocco on the African continent, made the Catholic belief legal. So we are going way back here. But then we also have cities, for example, again, that were founded in the Middle Ages, that have these beautiful half-timbered houses that people may have heard about, all the wooden beams that you can see from the outside. It's very, very beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sandra, tell us what sticks out to you about the history of some of these cities.
Well, so, I just wanted to say, so we have 17 cities and they have a lot in common. Not just that they're ancient, and like Sascha said, some of them are at least 800 years old. Many of them are over 2,000 years old. And what really makes them special, too, in our case, is that these 17 heritage cities are also all university towns. Heidelberg, for example, is the oldest university town in Germany. We have Tübingen, we have Würzburg. Additionally, universities where nobody even thought of America yet. And we already have people going to school and studying subjects like medicine, what we would now call law, philosophy. So I think this is something truly unique. And yes, we have a lot of old stones and walls and monuments. And if they could talk, the stories they can tell. But the great part about the historic highlights truly is that you have those locals that grew up in those cities with the pride for living in, a monument, essentially. The historic city centers are witnesses of all the history that happened there, but it's a vibrant town. It's full of life because you still, like 500-600 years ago, you still have students there today. And that makes them so unique.
That is unique. Sandra, you have guided so many American groups around Germany to so many of these places. For Americans who have never been to the country before, what can they expect? What is the experience going to be like when they visit these cities? What is that sort of day in the life of a local that they'll get to live when they come?
So I think what really makes visiting the historic highlights, those heritage cities, easier, and I don't want to say better, because we still love, we all love those big cities. We love Munich, we love Berlin, we love Frankfurt, Düsseldorf, and those are gateways to our cities. But just like any big city, like New York, like LA, like London, like Paris, they can be very, very overwhelming. And if you don't speak the language and you cannot read the signage, you don't know which public transportation to take, where to go, I think first-time visitors that get to a big city often feel overwhelmed and they feel like they're missing out. They don't know where to go, what to eat, what to do. The beauty of the historic highlights is that they're easily walkable, that the historic city centers are compact, that even if you're short on time, which most first-time visitors to Europe are, and a lot of people might just come to Germany for a couple of days, even though we all, we would want them to stay much longer. But, getting into, for example, let's take Augsburg. Here you are in the middle of town. You have this beautiful square with, everybody always laughs when they hear about the German Rathaus. It's Rathaus, and it has nothing to do with the little cute animal. It's the town hall. And then the Rathaus usually has a cellar underneath that are often restaurants. Then next to the Rathaus, you find at least one, most likely two, if not three churches. And you just look up and you're like, oh, let me walk over there. And I think that's something that the historic highlights really, really offer first-time visitors, that they feel more in control. They know where to go within 2-3 streets, or let's take Lübeck, within 2-3 main streets. And then you have all these little alleyways that you can wave through. And then in those alleyways, you see how the locals still live. And you may meet a grandma watering her plants in her front yard, or you see the kids playing soccer on a pedestrian street that is, limited to traffic. I think that's the big, big plus of visiting the smaller towns versus just the big cities.
Okay, Sascha, 17 cities is a lot of destinations to market. I'm sure you have to do quite a bit of work just to keep track of them. Tell us where in Germany they are. Are they all in one region? Are they all throughout the country? Is it easy to get from one to another? Kind of guide us through these destinations.
Sure. So, so first of all, my 17 cities are spread all over Germany. Let's take Rostock or Lübeck on the Baltic Sea, especially Rostock, which is very interesting when you go on the cruise in the Baltic. That's where most of them either start or stop. Then I do have Freiburg in the Black Forest, for example, down south on the border to France and Luxembourg. I do have Regensburg right in eastern Bavaria. I can offer, for example, Aachen, which is close to the border to Belgium and the Netherlands, or my hometown that we already talked about, Trier, which is a great stop if you want to have this as a hub, for example, to on the one hand side explore the beautiful Moselle region with the Riesling. You can go to Luxembourg, you can go to Belgium, and you can go to France all within 30 minutes from Trier. So it's a great place to have as a hub, for example, which is amazing. To get from point A to point B, I have to mention the big cities like Munich, Berlin, Frankfurt, but just to fly in and then take the train, for example, to reach all these destinations. Or if someone wants to experience the Autobahn, where on most of the parts of the Autobahn you can go as fast as you want. They're all connected on the one hand side again to the high-speed rail network system of the German rail, but also to the Autobahn.
And trains in Germany run on time, don't they?
Trains in Germany run mostly on time, yes.
Sascha, you have so many different cities, and American groups love to kind of go from place to place when they tour. They also love some kind of theme to tie the places together. So tell us about some of the different ways that groups can explore some of these historic cities with a focus on this theme or that theme, be it something history or something cultural or beer. Give us some of the examples of how people can do that.
Sure. Yeah. So, of course, as you said, as we have so much history in these destinations. On the one hand side, you can have every theme that you can think about when it comes to history. For example, the Romans. For example, the Romantic period in Germany. For example, the palaces and castles in Germany that you can visit. But on the other hand side, you do have the culinary part. Of course. Everybody knows that Germany is famous for its beer, of course. And again, there is Oktoberfest, and we all love Oktoberfest. But it can be overwhelming for first-time visitors because there is so much happening at Oktoberfest. Maybe you go to some of these smaller destinations that I represent, for example, in Bavaria, where the beer festivals are happening with Würzburg, Regensburg, and Augsburg. They also have 2 beer festivals each year. So they can easily do a beer routing. And again, there's not only Bavaria that has the beer, all of Germany has the beer. But what also many people don't know, we also have great wine in Germany, especially the white wine in Germany. That's more like the southwestern part of Germany. Let's say that we have 13 wine quarrying regions in Germany. So if you have a wine club, for example, that wants to travel to Germany, that is also very easy to do. And the wine quarrying regions are not far away from each other. So the distance that has to be traveled within Germany is very few.
I have to chime in because, now we have the families divided, the groups divided. We have, in my house, my husband loves his beer. I prefer my wine. And I always say in the historic highlights of Germany, cross drinkers are very, very welcome, meaning at the beer festivals, there's always a wine selection. There's usually also a cocktail bar for, those who really, really have to have yet another Aperol Spritz. And that's the other beauty too, is that these festivals, since they're not just targeted to mass tourism and huge crowds, they're also very, very family friendly, which means even if you do not drink alcohol or you do not want your kids to drink alcohol, drinking age is 16, admittedly, in Europe, which could be a nice way to transition for families if you want your kids to have a first taste. But at the same time, our most popular beverage in Germany, which people don't know because it looks like beer, is Apfelschorle, which is apple juice mixed with sparkling water. There are huge varieties of what we call limonade, which, the equivalent here would be Sprite. Regional, special, the juices, you can have rhubarb juice, black currant juice, red currant juice. So there's just so much to drink that is not necessarily alcohol. And then it pairs really, really nicely with all the local foods.
Yeah, that is amazing. So one of my colleagues recently went on a trip to some of these cities in Germany, and he came back raving about the beer festivals. Sascha, take me inside one of those festivals, inside one of those tents. Obviously, I'm going to be able to drink beer. What else is going to be happening? What can I enjoy? How am I connecting with the heritage of these places through these events?
Yeah, let's, on the one hand side, of course, you do have the beer festivals or the beer tents, let's put it that way. On the other hand side, you also do have a little bit of a fun fair usually with it. So you sometimes do have old merry-go-rounds on there. Sometimes you have the newer stuff that you can use on these fun rides. But once you are in the tent, it's all about connecting with the locals. It's really like if you haven't reserved the table, and the good thing is with the smaller destinations, you do not necessarily have to reserve the table. If you come with a lot of people, of course. But let's say you are just a couple, if you are just 2, 3, 4 friends, you can actually access these tents without a reservation, and you will probably find a table to sit at and also enjoy it with the locals, because most of the time there are also these tables usually fit like 8 to 10 people. I would rather say 8 because then you have a little bit of space to party and to move around a little bit, and then enjoy the music, the locals around you, enjoy the beer, enjoy the food that is usually around for so many years already, for so many centuries, because it's on the one hand side, it's locally grown. Also, many of these tents nowadays focus on locally grown or locally produced. So you do also have the surrounding the surrounding meals all in their tent too.
And when you talk music, we're talking not just traditional oompa brass bands. That's more like a daytime, early afternoon for the older crowd activity. At night, we're talking rock, pop. We're talking sometimes DJs, sing along. If I'm not mistaken, Mac was really, really surprised that all Germans pretty much shout and dance to Sweet Caroline. I hope you're not, playing that out too loud because I truly have no singing voice. But it's all these favorites from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, some modern pop. And it's a huge sense of community. And yes, you can stand on the benches and dance. Yes, you can wear lederhosen or dirndl and dress up. But even if you're just there to experience what we call Gastfreundschaft, Gemütlichkeit, the sense of hospitality, of feeling welcome, and of just enjoying yourself. I think that's really part of that experience.
That sounds amazing. There are logistics involved in going to festivals in most places. So Sandra, tell us a little bit about what it takes to get a group into one of these beer festivals. How far in advance do you have to start planning? How hard is it to get tickets? How does somebody start that process and make sure they're going to be able to deliver that experience for their customers?
Yeah. So first and foremost, there is no ticket. That's not an entranced event. And I think this is something that we're here in the US, we're so used to it. We're used to being carded. We're used to, having to get tickets in advance. And yes, there is crowd control, but it's not what you see. For example, when this year it was very unfortunate, Oktoberfest had to shut down, I believe, twice because there was just too many people coming to the grounds. Thankfully, the word is out more and more, also thanks to, Group Travel Leader, who shared these insider tips in your recent publications. But planning ahead is good. So planning ahead obviously has to do with book your hotels well in advance. Going during the week, especially if you have an older group, might be more suitable. But placing a reservation with the tent proprietors is very easy. It can easily be done online. I think this is also where having the historic highlights as a marketing association is there for Group Travel Leaders. We answer your questions. We give you pointers. We help you with reading information that might not be easily accessible in English, because that's still one of those obstacles that people might face, that maybe the first website that comes up is just in German. But that should not stop you. It also shouldn't stop you if you have travelers with limitations, be it, physical in the sense that you have somebody in a wheelchair. Because again, let's be honest here. We have Germans in wheelchairs too. We have, I have a dad. I mean, my dad uses a walker, and you'll see that these tents are all made for these situations. There's special dedicated seating. And then I think what I really, really love is that there are no time restrictions when it comes to the festivals in our cities. At Oktoberfest, at most tents, you have a slot for 3 hours, and be it a lunch slot, be it an afternoon slot, be it an evening slot. And then it's like out now. So we don't have that because usually people come, stay as long as they can and enjoy, but nobody's going to kick you out. There's no minimum consumption either. I think that makes it and you have table service. You have amazing, kind, friendly waiters. And the other big surprise, I think, for most Americans is you get not just your beer out of a nice Stein glass, you get a nice wine glass, you get a cooler for your wine, you get proper flatware, food is served on plates. And it makes for a very civilized experience. So I think for groups, just reach out to us, ask us questions, and we'll be happy to help you sort out the logistics. Where to park, when to go, and all of these things. Yeah, the biggest thing to plan in advance for, I would say, is hotel space, especially if you have a large group. But then that's the other beauty. So the beer festivals in our cities start as early as March, continue again in April or May, depending on when Easter comes. The next big one is in July, over the July 4th weekend. Great time to travel, good weather. Then we go, right, Sascha, into August and September. So there's always something happening festival-wise, not just beer festivals, but also wine fests, what we call city fests, musical summers. So for those groups, just tell us when your ideal travel time is, and I assure you we'll find you something fun to do all over Germany.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we're getting into the holiday season. And my very first experience in Germany was actually in December, many years ago. I won't say how long, but it was a long time ago. And I went to all these gorgeous Christmas markets in places like Regensburg. Tell people what that experience is like if they have never been. What is a German Christmas really like?
So I think people have to know that actually Germany is kind of the birthplace for Christmas, because that's where the 25th of December was decided on to being the Christmas day. So that's why our Christmas markets have so much to offer, so much history that you can experience there. Of course, we do have the hot malt wine. That's the most iconic thing you can get in your little mugs. I've seen many people collecting them. Even they have every year there is something else on these little mugs in every different city. So it's very, very beautiful, very cozy also. Sometimes you even do have special things that you can only get on the Christmas market in that special area. May it be, which is funny enough, a banana in Rostock on the Baltic Sea, but that has a little bit to do with the history in Eastern Germany, because that's where all the exotic fruits came into this port to be distributed throughout East Germany. But when they arrived in Rostock, most of them weren't as good as they supposed to be, so they got stuck kind of in Rostock, and now they bake them, they fry them, and it's very funny to have a baked banana on a Christmas market, but that's how it is, and then having your malt wine with it. Although I have to say, it's coming more and more. It's the Christmas beer, which has a little bit more of a Christmassy sweet flavor to it. To be fairly honest, I don't like it that much because I like the beer rather cold than hot. I stick with the malt wine. And what's really nice is if you are in the wine pouring regions, you most of the time find places where you can get a Vintner's malt wine, a so-called Winzerglühwein, which is actually even much better than the things you get from the store.
Yeah, and speaking of those local specialties, I think that's what really makes it unique. So let's take Freiburg, for example, which is one of our cities in the Black Forest region. So obviously, as you go to the Christmas market there, you get the iconic Black Forest ham, Schwarzwälder Schinken. You get what we call Glühwein mit Schuss, which means, if you can already handle the 14-proof malt wine, but you're feeling very, very cold, you could add another shot of a locally brewed spirit on top of it. If you go to Bonn, which is also famous for what we call Eierlikör, it looks like eggnog, but it has nothing to do with it. It's very, very boozy. So you can have a warm Eierlikör with some, whipped cream on top. If you like fruity things, we have Kirschglühwein, which would be cherry juice, or Heidelbeer, which is blueberries. So there's all these local variations. Now, we all know Germany is famous for the worst. And we Germans are the worst critics that you could possibly think of, because when you are in the southern part of Germany, the bratwurst tastes very differently than when you go to the heartland of Thuringia, with Erfurt, for example, with its iconic Thüringischer Bratwurst. Now, if you head further to the west, to the north, so just because you had one bratwurst in one place doesn't mean you've tasted them all, by no means. You have other specialties like Flammkuchen. If you're a picky eater, you will even find pizza there. And let me tell you, German pizza tastes quite different than American pizza versus Neapolitan pizza. You have everywhere else something that I absolutely love, and I know Sascha does too, even though we differ a little bit when it comes to the topping. It's the potato pancakes, Kartoffelpuffer, Reibekuchen. Oh, if you're in Aachen, you must have them. And it's best when you stand on the steps of the town hall looking at the stunning cathedral and you have these crispy potato pancakes, essentially, latkes, similar to latkes, and they are served with either applesauce, or in my case, I like a garlic sour cream on mine. So those are things that truly make it very, very special.
Yeah, I love that idea of having these very localized dishes that gives you an experience that is so authentic to that one town, and then the next town over, they're going to have a different recipe, they're going to have a different topping, you're going to experience the town in a different way. Sascha, what are some other ways that travelers can really find those very authentic ways to connect with local Germans in these towns when they're traveling?
Yeah, so I think on the one hand side, the obvious would be a local guide, because here in Germany, they are really locals. They are locals that, of course, had to go to a little procedure to manage all of that, to get to know the history and all of that. But then these people that guide you through the cities are locals already. So on one hand side, that. On the other hand side, if there is a festival, again, just try. Let's say the southern German part. The northern German part is a little bit tricky sometimes, but the southern German part is just sit, especially when it's like a beer festival, wine festival. You can ask if you can sit at their table, because if the table is big enough and there is still space for 5, 6, 7, 8 people on that table, you can ask and they will share the table with you, and then maybe you can have the chance to get in contact with them. Or, for example, if you go to a local vintner, talk to the local vintners, if you have a wine tasting, for example. All of these things can easily be done, and there is no big pressure on anybody. In the north, it's a little bit, they don't talk too much. People, even me as someone who was born in southern Germany, you have to get used to that a little bit, that they don't talk too much, but it's not that they are unfriendly, it's just the way they are. They are all friendly. It's just like the talking is not that much of a thing in northern Germany.
And what I would recommend too is, all of our cities have amazing tourist information centers. And this is where you're guaranteed to find somebody that is very, very fluent in English. I can tell you most Germans do speak English to a certain degree. And if you just come in with a little good morning or hello instead of hello, people will open up. Now, people are shy, just like we are shy to practice a foreign language. But if you go into these tourist information centers, not only do you get firsthand, maps. Who still doesn't like a map or like a short best of highlights brochure? You can get city cards that give you reduced entrance to all major attractions, that give you additional public transportation access. But you also, again, have those locals right in front of you. And another way to connect is through the products that you find in the tourist information. Let's go back maybe to Aachen one more time. The famous Printen cookies. It's like a gingerless gingerbread. Absolutely a must try. But then you find other variations on top of that. And conversations start. In Würzburg at the tourist information center. For example, you find these beautiful iconic pillows in the shape of the Boxbeutel, which is a round bottle, iconic for that region. And yeah, so I think, looking for those local places. Yes, can you go to McDonald's in all of our cities? Yes, you can. But why not go to the local bakery and then just watch what the person in front of you is getting and then give that a try? Soon you will see the conversation starting with the people that are working in the store because they know you're foreign and they might give you a taste also at the farmer's market. So those are all great places to connect.
We talked about Christmas markets. A lot of people don't realize there are other holiday celebrations in Germany. Sandra, tell us about what people can expect if they visit during Easter season, for instance.
Oh, yeah. So one of the biggest surprises for visitors from afar is that we have a huge tradition of celebrating Easter. The schools are closing for up to 2 weeks on that period. Easter itself is a big deal, whether you're a person of faith or you just like to hang out with your family and friends. So Good Friday is a national holiday. Easter Monday is also a national holiday. So all these long weekends that, we're used to from the 4th of July, Memorial Day, President's Day, we have tons of them all over Germany with even regional differences. Pentecost is another big deal where all of a sudden the Monday is a full day off. It's a bank holiday. And that's when the cities come up with other activities, other fests. So I think, when you look at the calendars, always look for a local fest, add the name of the season. So Frühling for spring, Sommer is easy. It's just summer with a U. Herbst is fall. Then we have the winter. And just, last week I was back in the office in Würzburg and it was 11/11. And on November 11 at 11:11 a.m. is when we kick off what we call the 5th season. This is our carnival. So you think Mardi Gras, you think, what happens in New Orleans, for example, on a very different way. But Germans do party and they party fairly strongly. If you're into, dressing up, we have traditional dances, other costumes and customs. And that goes on from November all the way up until Lent kicks off. And then speaking of Lent kicking off, that's also where some of the early beer festivals are starting. And last but not least, let's take Rostock again. On the 1st of January, Sascha, there's something really special happening that I just learned about today.
So in Rostock each year, at Rostock, it's on the Baltic Sea. The seaside resort of Rostock is called Warnemünde. That's also where the ships are leaving or are stopping for the Baltic Sea cruise. So they do have a lighthouse there, and it's right at the beach. Yes, Germany has beaches on the north end, on the North Sea and the Baltic. They are great if you are there in July and August. Other than that, just keep walking and enjoy the time there. And on the 1st of January every year, at 6 p.m., there will be a huge firework going on and welcome the new year a little bit later than usually. Of course, we all celebrate it at 12 a.m. on the 1st of January, but they celebrate it on 6 p.m. on the 1st of January when you have a huge festival going on the beach.
And then, Brian, I hate to come in one last time, but when we're talking about fireworks, about illuminations, about beautiful things to see, yes, there are the events where you spend money, but there's so much happening where you just, sit down in a park and enjoy either beautiful gardens that are fully in bloom with tulips, for example, in Potsdam, Sanssouci. Then there's music festivals over the summer, open air, often free. Some of them, it's hire more, famous people, or it's a celebration of Mozart or Beethoven, then they're ticketed events. But in Heidelberg, you also have the projections on the castle, up on the hill. So there's truly a lot to see and do. And for those your group travel leader readers, we'd love to share our events calendar with them and then highlight all of these events, many of them free of charge. And again, you are part of the local community enjoying those festivities.
Yeah. And these events, it sounds like, as you describe them, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I can come in January. for the fireworks on the beach. I can come for beer festivals starting in the spring. There's lots of stuff in the fall. There's Easter, there's Christmas. Sascha, is it really a year-round calendar of events and opportunities for people to come whenever works for them?
Yeah, definitely. So if you are not afraid of cold weather, warm weather, and you just want to enjoy Germany and just want to deep dive into our culture of whatever there is that we celebrate, it's a year-round destination, definitely. Yeah.
I love that. Now, you mentioned English being widely spoken. There are a few things that, Americans who haven't traveled internationally are also sometimes concerned about. Is it going to be safe? Is it going to be super expensive? What can you tell us about safety and affordability in these smaller German towns, Sascha?
Yeah, so when it comes to, let's start with the safety aspect of it. We are university towns. Yes, maybe sometimes in the evening it can get loud here and there because students are partying or something like that. But that's the most that there is. You can easily walk from point A to point B. That's what all Germans do. You always have people around you. So there's not much of loneliness going on if you walk from your restaurant, for example, because now it's getting dark outside already at 4:30 here in Germany. But everyone is outside anyway, so there are very few areas, probably more on the outskirts of the cities, where you would be alone. So there's always people around you. So there is no huge thing about security here. You can easily walk from point A to point B without being afraid of something. Second part, you can. What was the second part again?
Just the affordability.
The affordability.
Currency fluctuates. Europe sometimes can feel very expensive to Americans. How affordable is it to visit these historic destinations? Yeah,
I would say the good thing with the destinations that I represent, the 17 historic highlights of Germany, because we are not that touristy, it's still everything is for the locals. So it isn't that high price. Also, hotels are not that high price than in the bigger destinations in Germany. The smaller destinations are still very, very affordable. On the one hand side, when it comes to hotels, we also do have chain hotels. If you have a group that is on a budget, for example, we do have chains here that offer budget hotels. Of course, we do have the high price hotels also in these 17 historic highlights of Germany. On the other hand side, yes, as Sandra said, we do have McDonald's here. If you just want to grab a burger, yes, you can. But you can also get a fancy burger if you want to, or you go to the local restaurant and have a local meal there. So it's very affordable, and I don't think that you need to spend tons of money to be in these smaller destinations.
Yeah, I think one big advantage that we also have is an incredible public transportation network. All of our cities are connected by both high-speed ICE trains, and I know Americans just love taking trains because it's so hard here and so complicated and often it's really, really expensive. Then we also have the regional trains. We have something that's called the Germany ticket, das Deutschland ticket, where for 1 month you can use all public transportation, including the regional trains. So that's makes it really affordable to go from point A to point B. You can reserve seats on a train for a nominal fee. Also, ATMs are everywhere. Now, people like to pay with their phones. That's very, very easy. That has gotten, much more accepted, even for smaller amounts. And so for me, in my everyday life, my number one destinations are still Italy, Spain, France. And when you pair Germany, also especially in high season, you find hotels that are significantly cheaper with the same, if not a higher level of service. And I think that's maybe the last point too, is like, a 3-star hotel in Germany, it can be just what you're thinking of for a 4 plus here in the US. So don't discredit that, because the criteria for a 3-star hotel, for example, can only be because there's no restaurant on site that serves lunch and dinner. Doesn't make it a bad hotel because the hotel is right next to 3 other local restaurants. So why would they have their own restaurant if the travelers can just go next door? And so I think that's affordability is huge for Germany. It's often underestimated.
Yeah, for sure. Sandra, for American tour planners who would love to find a partner in these German cities to handle the logistics on the ground, to package their tours for them, what's the best way for them to go about finding those DMCs or receptive operators to help them with these trips?
They should send an email over here to Sascha. And then based on their needs, based on the geographical area, we have a wonderful portfolio of amazing partners that target almost every topic, every interest that you could think of. And, just as we know our cities inside out, we also know which wonderful partners you have. There's also the big tour operators, the big DMCs that cover some of our cities. We wish it would be all of them or at least a few more. But slowly but steady, we think this is coming. And with the awareness being created, also thanks to you here, we're putting even more of our cities on the map for Americans. The big recommendation that I have is truly don't think of these cities as one-nighters. At least make it 2, ideally 3. We all think, the more I see, the better it is. No, it's nice to actually arrive somewhere, to relax, then have a half day to explore the next day. So I think that's my biggest recommendation for the travel planners. If at all possible, allow for some more time for your travelers in each and every destination so that experiential element that, hey, I feel like I've really gotten to know this town kicks in.
Yeah. All right, Sascha, tell us how people can find you, get in touch with you, follow you online, learn more about the historic highlights of Germany.
Sure. So on the one hand side, of course, everybody does have a website that's going to be historicgermany.com. On the other hand side, you can always email us at info@historicgermany.com. We do have an Instagram, which is Historic Germany. So everything you see, everything is about Historic Germany. Just try to focus on the Historic Germany, either historicgermany.com or on Instagram, Historic Germany.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, before I let you all go, we have some questions we ask every guest. These are just for fun, and Sandra has answered them before because she's been on the show before. So, Sascha, I'm gonna hit you with the questions here, and they're easy and fun, so no pressure. When you book travel, do you choose a window seat or an aisle seat?
I'm an aisle person.
Yeah. How do you make that decision?
To be fairly honest, I always I don't want to be scrooged in somewhere. I just want to be free to move around whenever I want to. I don't want to talk to the people. I just want to be have a relaxed flight and use the facilities whenever I want.
All right. So, Sascha, what is one thing in your carry-on luggage that you wouldn't travel without?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I would probably have to say it's my iPad and maybe 2, my iPad and my headphones, because I'm a huge fan of Netflix, and I always try to watch as many series as I can, which I download beforehand most of the time, and then enjoy and relax on the plane.
That's a good way to go. So speaking of plane, if you had a free airline pass, or it can be a free Eurail pass, you pick your mode of transportation. But if you had a free pass and a week with nothing else to do, where would you go next?
I do have to say that I want to go to Japan because I've never been to Japan, and it's one of the countries I always wanted to go to. So I will pick Japan.
Yeah. Excellent. Last question here. What is one thing you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
Oh, that probably has to be fairly honest, Australia, because I spent a year in Australia and New Zealand backpacking back in the days. And Australia really has a place in my heart that I always wanted to go back and experience that again.
Yeah. That sounds amazing. Well, you guys have convinced me this is a place I need to get back to, and I can't wait to explore some of these destinations. Sascha and Sandra, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much, Brian.
As we say in Germany, auf Wiedersehen, until we see you over there, right?
Yeah, until then. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sascha and Sandra as much as I did. And I hope it inspires you as it inspired me to start thinking about German travel once again. Now, you can learn more about all of the 17 historic cities in Germany at historicgermany.travel. We're going to link to that in the show notes for you as well. Now, that about wraps it up for this special bonus episode of Gather and Go. Next week, we're back to our regular schedule and the final episode of the year. In this one, I'm going to bring you a really helpful conversation with Sheila Scarborough, who is a tourism marketing expert who's going to explain to us why your most powerful trip marketing tool might be one that you have been overlooking for years. That's a conversation you won't want to miss. Until then, though, remember this. At the end of the day, we are all on this trip together, so let's make it a good one. See you next time on Gather and Go. Gather and Go is hosted and executive produced by me, Brian Schul. Our publisher is Mac Lacey. Our creative team includes Danya Simmons, Ashley Ricks, and Rachel Crick. Our sales team is Talisa Reck and Ashley DeLucia. To advertise on the podcast, call Talisa at 859-253-0455. Gather and Go is a production of the Group Travel Leader. For more information on our podcast, magazines, and events, visit us online at grouptravelleader.com.